Welcome to Just 15 Minutes, a space where leaders share the real practices that keep them steady under pressure. My name is Eric Bomyea, and today I'm joined by Bryan Semple, a go-to-market operating partner for private equity firms and their portfolios. Welcome, Bryan.
Thanks, Eric. I'm very excited to be here and to see you again.
Yeah, me too. Before we start, I'm hoping that you'll join me for a brief drop-in.
Sure.
Okay, so it's a settling practice where we'll just settle together for a moment and just inviting you to take a moment to arrive. You can close down your eyes if that feels good. And my prompt is just to feel your feet on the ground or whatever part of your body is making contact with the surface below it.
I have
And
one foot
from
on the
there,
ground actually right now, but this one.
yeah. Sometimes I find that too. I'm like, at least one foot. Right now, I'm actually seated meditation style, so I can feel my sits bones on the ground. And from this place of awareness of our bodies, inviting 3 breaths together. We'll do this in through the nose and out with a little sigh. Any noise is welcome. In through the nose.
I'm not a noisemaker in yoga.
That's okay. That's okay. There's an edge there. So in through the nose, only if it feels good. This last one, maybe it's a hum in through the nose. And it's from here that we'll begin. Okay, let's dive in. You've spent your career architecting complex growth engines, and you're also a private pilot. So both of these are situations where calm under pressure is essential. So I'm wondering if you can share a moment when the stakes were high and how you chose to meet it as a leader.
So most of the stuff in business, the stakes actually aren't high. So, I mean, I was a military officer when I started my career, and the stakes there were high. So I actually don't think a lot of the stuff in business stakes are high because it's just, you're not like a fireman, you're not an EMS, it's not life or death situations. You're not a police officer trying to go figure out if you're about to get shot or not. I mean, the stakes actually aren't that high, and you actually can take time to reflect, think about things, talk, get consensus, get outside perspective before you do things. So the whole concept of things that are quote work emergencies, they're just not. And so I think you have to approach things that the stakes just aren't that high, and there's really no emergencies. It's not to say things don't get stressful, right? And they're high intensity and you're grinding a lot, but at the end of the day, the stakes they're just not that high. And nothing is ever so high that doesn't allow you to slow down, think about things before you react. In fact, even in flying, if something goes wrong with a plane, the first thing to do is to do nothing, because likely the first thing you do is going to make things worse. So you want to just sit back, reflect. Okay, what's actually happening right here? Okay, plane's still flying, still going in the right direction. There's something wrong here. What do I go do?
I really enjoy that offering of, there are high stakes and there's high intensity. And somebody who may not have experienced high stakes, a life or death job, an emergency position, things like that, may not have the context to be able to see their high intensity as not high stakes. And so I'm wondering what advice you might give to somebody to help them to see that.
Well, it's sort of tough because you get people that this is a bet the company job. This is a burn the bridges decision. We're either all in or out. I mean, you get this crazy, crazy stuff. You're just like, okay, it's like, come on. These are not life or death decisions. They're just not. They're important decisions, and yeah, I mean, you don't want to be in a situation. There's nothing worse than being in a company that's going the wrong way, right? It's just so painful, so painful. But they're just not life or death decisions.
Absolutely. And I think going back to that pilot example, if one of the things that you're taught in that training is to not do the first thing that comes to mind, that to me is a pause so that you move from what would have been a reaction into a response. So taking that pause, taking that time to think critically about what is my response going to be rather than my gut reaction.
Yeah, and the other thing people do sometimes, which I think is super helpful, is we're going to sleep on this. Here's the decision. or this is what we're going to do. We're have a 24-hour to make sure it still looks good in the morning. I think those are helpful tools to sort of make sure you're giving the right response. And then the other thing I would say is you identify a problem, you want to go do something about that problem, is you put it on the Jira board in the backlog, because fire drills are incredibly non-productive for everybody. Fire drills from the top just churn employees, they churn teams, they just add unnecessary stress. They cause people to come out of their workflows to go get stuff done. Fire drills and urgent requests are one of the devils of running a smooth, efficient team. And so, especially if you're a leader and you like, this absolutely happens. You see like, oh my gosh, you uncover something. This is so screwed up what we're doing here. This is the worst thing ever. I can't believe we're doing that. You still go put it as a Jira ticket and put it in the backlog, put it in your own personal backlog. And then I can't tell you how many times I've done that. And then, the next week comes along for trying to figure out what we're going to do in the next sprint or the next cycle, and it doesn't make the cut. And then 2 weeks goes along and it doesn't make the cut. And 2 months later, there's still this thing in the backlog that at the time was the most urgent thing you thought had to get solved. And you're like, that isn't even a problem anymore. And so you've averted a fire drill, you've averted a knee-jerk reaction to the organization, and you haven't done basically unnecessary work. So pausing in an airplane, it's like, okay, I'm going to pause for a minute before I do anything to try to figure out what's actually going on here. And in a work setting, it might be, I'm not going to interrupt this work cycle. I'm going to put this in the backlog no matter how much I want to make it a fire drill right now. It's super helpful. And especially if you're a manager, you got to be very careful when you identify a problem that your team doesn't suddenly run off to go support it. If I keep telling them to stop, hey, this is a problem. We're going to put it in the backlog. I don't want you all to do anything about it. Don't you don't need to do anything about it. I got it. We're just going to deal with it later. You have to exercise the discipline, because people will do things to try to anticipate what you think they're going to make them go do. So whether it's the Jira backlog or just pausing, absolutely critical.
Because those fire drills will dysregulate a nervous system. It's not just going to dysregulate the workflow. It is going to dysregulate a nervous system that may have been regulated, heads down doing work. Now that nervous system is spiked. And is that necessary? Or can you say, as a leader, it's not necessary for me to do this right now. I know the impact that this is going to have. And that is not my intention. My intention is not to dysregulate my team. And so can I make the conscious choice now to actually pause myself, put it in the backlog? I'm still going to acknowledge it. I'm still going to acknowledge it for people and do that from a place of grounded presence to say, hey, this is the situation that we're dealing with. This is the observation that I just made. We're going to put this in the backlog and we're going to check in a week to see if it's still relevant.
Right. Absolutely. And I think so what I personally would have to, so I don't know, some people said I was a Tasmanian devil when I was in the office, that I would just spin and cause issues. So, which is true. So you're laughing. So I would tell people, and I would tell people this day one when they met me, and I would tell them that, I would often tell people this. I'd say, look, I have a lot of ideas. I walk around. I like to talk to people. I like to bounce things off you. But that doesn't mean to go do any of it. In fact, I don't want you to do any of it. And I would specifically have to tell people, I don't want you to do anything here. This is just you and me. We're just talking. I've just got ideas. And so I think it's really important for leaders to establish that, because otherwise someone walks into your office or your cube and says, blah, blah, blah. They're going to go do something about that. And you've just derailed them. And so it's really hard you really have to work hard to not, managers have to work really, really hard to not derail their teams, because that derailment, to your point, causes just all kinds of angst and unhappiness.
Yeah. And I remember those conversations with you. And from those conversations and that experience with you, it's actually taught me not to jump. When people say jump, I don't anymore, right? I pause, I think critically, I work through it with them, and then decide, are we jumping afterwards?
Right. And there's a very polite way to say that. You can say, okay, so I think I've captured what you want me to do. It sounds like it's this. This is the stuff that's currently in my queue. This is what I'm currently working on. Do you want me to stop what I'm doing and reprioritize and go do that? I mean, that is a, and if you have that conversation with your manager, any good manager can be like, oh my gosh, this person is super buttoned up and is like really monitoring their deliverables and giving me, because the manager doesn't know necessarily what you're working at. So if you tell them that, they're like, oh, actually, no, keep working on that. When you get that done, let's circle back and we'll figure out how to go maybe slot this in. Yeah. I mean, good managers, especially if they have wide spans of control, they just don't know what people are working on. I mean, they maybe once or twice a week they sit down. Again, if you've got a sprint process going on, you can figure out what people are generally working on. Yeah, that's super critical. And then it's not only managers disruptive, it's also the people that from the sides and the peers that can come in and disrupt. And so you've got to sort of build a respectful organization that um, people respect other people's time. They don't necessarily throw too many bombshells into the other teams. You were always on the creative team, which is the downstream team for everything, right? Yes, and you would find the people that, and some people are better. I'm not a good planner. You can find the people that are good planners, the people that are not good planners, the people that aren't good planners. It's like, yeah, they're disruptive, and you have to figure out how to go like feed them in without being too disruptive. So yeah,
Absolutely.
it's a delicate balance.
It is. And I'm going to wrap up what I'm hearing both of us say, and it really comes down to regulation, the leader being regulated, the employee being regulated, because in that moment of the employee being able to reflect back to the leader does require a certain level of presence, and it requires a certain level of groundedness. And that is not easy to maintain or to hold when you have a superior who is coming towards you with something. And so presence for me is the thing that will help to create that culture of respect, that culture of being able to stay steady, to be able to receive feedback, to receive conversations without getting swept up into reactions. And so to close, I'm wondering if you could share a practice that you maintain in your daily life that helps you to stay steady in those high intensity moments.
I'll share it. So I mean, I was an operator for 25 years, grinding it out, right? 25, 30 years. And since I stopped doing that and I'm doing consulting on my own, it's a lot easier to be present because I can schedule my time as I want. I mean, within reason, right? I can go do things I enjoy. I can mix working with the things I enjoy. I think if you're still in the grind, for at least when I was in the grind, the key thing for me was just for me it was exercising every day before work. It was just a chance to sort of that's the time it worked for me. Early days, right? Get on the train, go work. I think the other interesting thing for me would be I was usually taking commuter rail to work. So I would use that time to sort of, on the way in, to plan my day. And on the way home, I would use that to sort of empty my brain. So the time that I got back home, I was like ready to go. I was like, I did all the work I need to get done. So I wasn't carrying baggage home, which was super helpful. And then I'm also a big note writer. So I would just, and I still do that. I empty my brain just by writing stuff down, putting it on the list, putting lists in, just getting it out. So I'm just not obsessing over stuff.
And with that, any final reflections or advice to somebody that's listening who feels that they have no time or no space or too many demands, but still is trying to lead with presence anyway?
The work always fills the time. As a manager, people are always like, we need another blah, blah, blah. We need another this. It's like, yeah, absolutely. Because the work always fills the time. So it really comes down to prioritizing the most critical work you have to get done, agreeing on that prioritization with your manager, recognizing that not everything is going to get done. You got a backlog, you got stuff in progress, you got stuff complete. Those are the three job states. You can only have so much stuff in progress. Your backlog can be super big. Help prioritize what you want to go put into your in progress bucket, because the work will always expand. The work will always expand to the time available. It always will.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your time with me and for those words of advice and wisdom. Truly, I believe that the context and perspective shifting is critical here.
Super.
Moving from life or death to, yes, this is high intensity, but it is not high stakes. And can we regulate our nervous systems enough to be able to make that shift? And so practices like movement really help with that, being present with each other. Thank you. And with that, will you join me for a closing? It is with deep reverence, appreciation, and gratitude for all those that have influenced us and all of those that will go on to influence. And I hope that everyone can give themselves just 15 minutes next time that the world feels like it is high stakes, to realize that maybe it's just high pressure or high intensity, and they can maybe avoid, spinning out of control.
Absolutely.
So thank you again, and I'll see you later.
Thank you, Eric. Take care.